Call the meeting to order at 7:31. If you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call please.
Pam?
Here.
Okay. Dan?
Here?
I'm here. TJ?
Here.
Mark is not here.
Well, he told me he wasn't going to be here.
Okay. And Augie is not here.
He told me he wasn't able to be here either. Neither one of them are in town.
Okay.
And you're forgetting one
Well,
by here.
You don't want to get on? Because it didn't do meltdown or sorry.
Number 4, approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted for October 16th, 2017.
Second. Open.
TJ? Yeah. Okay. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? The agenda passes. Public comment for agenda items.
This will be the first.
Not quite. None. Okay. New business items? None. Old business items, master plan update. Last month, we reviewed the USD section of the master plan, and we gave some suggestions and direction to our planner, Mr. Montagno, and he dove into it head first, was providing some vision and some suggestions, and apparently it's turning into more of an onion than anticipated, so he's head first in it, so we're not quite prepared, but Paul, maybe you can tell us where you are in that.
Sure, so based on the direction that was provided at the last meeting, we're moving forward with this, but it is somewhat complicated and, just trying to take the vision that we received from the planning commission and make sure we get the language right, get the maps right, so that when we do bring this back, it's all ready to go and it's in a form that's ready for you to make comments on and something that's more presentable. So unfortunately, we're not quite there yet, but we do continue to work on it, and we'll be circling back with that soon.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot going on over there. Okay. And actually, another master plan update, Bruce has been doing lots of coloring and map evaluation, and so he's gonna present to us what he has been doing.
Coloring was never my strong suit, ever.
You did a very nice job.
But I just, again, I'm not an authority or an expert in the field whatsoever. I'm just making some observations, and they're not spinning it in one way or the other, just doing some math and trying to figure out where we're at a 30,000-foot level. And there's certainly a few more, as you can see, there's some areas colored in here. There's a few more that could be colored in, but I didn't know which color they'd be based on how we wanted to view them. Some have come up with the, around the landfill and things like that, some properties. So we have a few more to color in. That could be colored in, but in short, what we're looking at here is the colored in areas are somewhat either predetermined. They're residential properties that either have homes on them now or will have a home on them. They're pretty much predetermined what they're going to be. We've got our commercial properties here, the landfill over here, Salem Springs down here, all the golf courses, our protected properties. So it's pretty well predetermined that there's not, either development is established or we know what they're going to be, such as the protected farm. And this constitutes about 54%, and again, so we probably color in a little bit more, about 54% of our total land. We got 23,040 acres plus or minus in our township, and this constitutes about 54% of it. Which means we got, you know, give or take, depending on how we call it, about 40% of our property could be something other than what we were anticipating it could be if somebody was to try to come after developing it. And some of the things that enter into the equation in addition to this, as you can see kind of why some of this developed the way it did when you look at the perkability map over here, the soil map. You can see where some of the better perks are in some of the areas that have already been developed right down through here. The kind of the orange being the better perk site. So, but it also shows where some of those white areas also still have some good perkable property. And this is not an absolute guaranteed perk, not perk type thing, because there's a lot of properties that are blue, which are the not likely to perk, and have property have made perk sites, but they've either had engineered fields or awful deep, you know, a lot of sand backfill. This is based on more surface soils, not based on the deep soil. So it's not that you can't get other perk sites, but that gives an example of why some of this development did the way it did. As one of the real estate agents said, you know, all the easy stuff's already been sold, everything else is hard now because you got to figure out how to work around the perkability and some other issues. So, so again, some of the informational items, the conservation and preservation properties make up about 950 acres. Public roads and utilities are 556 acres. Recreational properties, golf courses, 978 acres. Salem Township owned properties, 569 acres. Advanced disposal and I think the Plymouth Township is an old dump site, I guess, so that's 491 acres. So, you know, all in all, that makes up about 3,500 acres, or 15% of Salem is in utilities or township-owned properties or the landfill, things like that. If you want to look at the USD, just a couple of informational items on there. There's a lot of questions about that, but the USD is like 1,623 gross acres here total. There's 1,623 gross acres. And by the time you subtract the utilities and roads of 239 acres, which by the way, that 1,623 acres is 7% of our total township land. So 7% of the township is this USD. Utilities and roads are 239 acres. Existing residential and preserved land, which would be Mark Hill and these homes up here, and these few homes here, which have already been developed around, so I thought it was safe to consider them being still homes. If it wasn't already developed around, I might have said those are sacrificial. They might have gotten bought out, but they're pretty much locked in, so not at risk. These homes down here constitute another 52 acres. So by the time you take out ITC, the freeway, all of our roads, etc., and Salem Springs, that leaves us about 700 acres of potentially developable space. Some of it already has, I didn't count the commercial existing sites that are on there, Christians and all that, I didn't count that as you know, existing. I actually counted as developable because of the value, the potential value of the property. It's easy to say that some of that might be bulldozed and redone something different. So I left that as developable. So we've got 700 acres, or about 3% of our township is, I want to say, at risk, if you want to put it that way, or better to put it, it's at the potential of being shaped into what we want it to be shaped as. So rather than saying risk, it's an opportunity to be shaped the way we want it to shape up. And that's where Paul, you're helping us out a lot to try and figure that out. So that's just a few things that we have to look at, but the key thing is back to this first map, is again, we want to really look at, you know, again, 10, give or take 10 landowners here have a lot of property that make up 15%, again, that 15%, again, about 3,500 acres makes up about 15% of our township in some of these larger existing farms that are not protected right now. And or continuous large parcels that could be, as a developer looks at it, could be pulled together. Going back to, some of the mentalities I tried to put into place, if I was a developer, I would not be interested in that piece of property. It's hard to get into, yet it's counted into developable acreage, but what can you do with this triangle here? It's got a freeway here and already has a protected land here. You're not gonna be able to develop much of it. Might be an individual estate, but you're probably not gonna really attract a guy that's gonna try and put in development and make some serious coin on developing that property. So it's not really as risky as maybe this place up here. So, now we have an opportunity to look at what pieces, then we can start assessing, what we'd like to see on those pieces, and maybe start talking to some of the landowners and things like that are out there to see, what they would like to see, and help us define the things that are undefined right now, which is rural character. And there was a big, after what you pointed out, I go to the website, and man, it's just pages and pages of rural character definition. And all of you said, it's almost impossible to define it because it changes from community to state to township. So it's a moving target of what rural character is. We refer to it frequently. So that's one of our challenges here, is to try and help assess what that means to this township in our land.
Real quick, how many acres is in that slice?
Which one? This one here? I think
Yes.
it was 35.78 acres.
Isn't that wet in some parts of it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't get in, there's another thing that says how good the farmland is, and again, you'll probably tell me it's not as good as what the map that washtenaw says is. There's probably a lot of that is wetlands and not farmable, and is wooded and treed and stuff like that. So the maps can be deceiving at times, very deceiving, but it starts to give us something to work and do some homework on, and to start maybe targeting who we should bring in and start getting involved with this, because it affects, affects all of us here. This is the community we chose to live in, and we'd like to see how it, how it turns out, and we'd like to see it turn out kind of like we had anticipated. And yet we can't take away the rights of the landowners and just say you can't do what you want to do, but we can try and help as a team together steer the shape of our community. And that's the whole objective here, is to try and steer how we shape our community. So it's just an exercise trying to help us find out what we should be looking at, and where some of the opportunities are, or where some of our potential weaknesses are, etc. So, any questions on it?
So can you tell us what the goal is in this exercise, so that people don't start freaking out? What do you mean you're gonna tell me what to do with my land?
I'm not telling you what to do with the plan. The goal here is to help, as planners, we have a couple of responsibilities: safety, health, and welfare, and the other is to give a guide to how our township is shaping up, or is to shape up as it develops. You can't stop the development necessarily, but we can try and guide it towards that rural character. And again, if you start reading the definition of rural character, you'll find that for some people it's about actually doing some cluster developments so that you have open land, and then you try and embrace the natural features as open land, and you decide where you want to cluster your development, so that so you're not actually cutting down the number of potential homes, but you're organizing them in such a fashion that you don't scatter them around. And again, I don't want to offend anybody here whatsoever, but you look at some of our developments, some of them are pretty straight line, just soldier row lots. Some of them are designed, right next door, are designed around the ponds and the rolling hills and the creeks, and you've got very odd shaped land, and you've got two lots in the middle of a large cul-de-sac. So there's a potential for coming up with some nice developments that really enhance our rural character, as opposed to, there's that word again, rural character, that enhance our features and natural things, as opposed to just, the the developments I'm looking at as I drive down Pontiac Trail into Ann Arbor, you know, they just bulldozed and stripped everything down to bare dirt and starting over again. It's like, there was no attempt to save anything. It just was pure bulldoze it and start over. So, you know, again, some of our goals are to try and again, shape our future to try and make sure we achieve that rural character that seems to pop up in our definition or our recommendations of what we should be doing here. And as I said, there's a lot of opportunity. If you start looking at who owns some of the property, you can see some of its investors. Maybe need to reach out to those investors and start asking what you're thinking on this property. So here's what we would like to see on this property. So, you know, we want to kind of tie some of that together as fast as possible. You know, another example, unless there's an easement granted to this piece of property is landlocked unless ITC grants an easement over this block of land. But here's a large plot that's for sale right now with a home on it that could easily sell off part of it to give access to that property. You know, those are out there. And so this property is very capable of being, you know, that guy is liable to call, you know, that landowner is liable to call that landowner and say, hey, you want to buy a chunk of this property to get access to your property and develop that out. And if we look at the perk sites, there's good perk right in this area for sure. And doesn't mean to say there isn't anywhere else, but those are all potentials that are out there. So it's just food for thought. It's not trying to make a statement one way or the other. It's just trying to give us some more tools to do what we want to do and help give Paul some more direction on what we'd like his help on.
Good.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Very good.
And I think what really clicked is, while we're working on this master plan, you mentioned what this was just an exercise to at least look at the 10,000-foot level to see, while we're working on our master plan, does everything fit as far as regards to the natural features and working around things, and
Well,
doing a little planning, things of that nature. Is that correct?
That's correct. There was some early on homework done on you know, making some of these things in our, in one of the things that the Parks and Rec thing from several years ago. And I think some of that is done by using these maps, which is not necessarily accurate. So back to my point is, you know, we really need to reach out to the folks who've lived here for years and years and years and go, hey, come on, help us out here. Tell us what's really real about this stuff and what's the best thing about your property and what would you like to see it do and how to be developed. What are some nicer natural features? There's a lot of opportunities out there to start asking our own residents here, you know, what do you want and what would you like to see beside it?
Land preservation is a piece of that.
Right.
Doing a lot of what you're saying, you know,
I mean,
talking
same
to
thing,
people and seeing what they
exactly.
want to do with their property, what their options are and that type of thing.
Well, and again, as planners and Paul might be able to come up with ways to look at those, if we start taking this inventory and going a little step further and finding out what the national features are and who is maybe looking at it and saying, no, my family's, and the next generation is already taken over, we're going to be farming for years to come, don't worry about us. And one of the other, speaking with that, well, one of the other maps I have, there's just a small map, but of course, this is our zoning map, which is subject to maybe a few adjustments, because again, if you look at, here's another idea here, you look at, this is all commercial property, but, you know, I don't mean to bring up any salty wounds here, but you're kind of dictating how much development we can have, because we don't have a lot of truck traffic available to get industry in and out of here. So the industrial area here is not going to be something that's going to be factory-based that has a lot of truck traffic requirements, because we're pretty much between Northville and our own hamlet here, we're kind of restricting the ability for that to grow in a high volume commerce area. It might have to look at something a little more industrial, high tech, you know, like labs or whatever, that your people are coming and going, but you're not bringing in you're not doing manufacturing and bringing a lot of raw materials and sending out finished goods. Another small map here is just a quick, you know, we have a lot of farmland, which is the yellow Some are more active than others, some of them are investment properties, but still being farmed. Some of our farmland, again, I'm just referring to as farmland in general, but there actually is multiple types of farms out there. I mean, I call them estate farms, there's forest farms, agricultural farms. So, again, I've got a lot to learn about that, and quite honestly, I don't know what is the reason for some of these, but you get some of these estate type farms, they may already be predetermined to go on into the family, so you kind of scratch that one off the list and not worry about it. You have others that are you consider specifically for development purposes, so. Just, again, food for thought and tools.
Thank you, Bruce.
Right.
Okay. Number 8, reports of commissioners and correspondence, Board of Trustees. Anything to report?
Nothing with Forest Planning Commission. No, we do railroad work. Chug road. Just safety.
Oh. Zoning Board of Appeals, Carol?
Nothing,
Okay.
nothing new.
Land Preservation?
We haven't had a meeting for 2 months, so we'll have one tomorrow night.
Okay. I don't have anything to add or contribute. Number 10, approval of the minutes September 18th, 2017.
I make a motion to accept the minutes from September 18th as submitted.
A second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of September 18th, 2017, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? The minutes are approved. Number 11, public comment. Yeah, sure, come on up and tell us who you are.
I'm Cindy Jankowicz. I live over at 8 Mile and Pontiac Trail. So right there by Kroger's and stuff, and right behind the library. So very fortunate there. And we have an empty lot of land next to the library, so north of the library. And then there's a plot of land across the street that's for sale. And of course, I'm concerned about us deviating from the master plan and making that commercial, since I live right there. But I also reached out to the library, and I do know they're interested in buying the lot of land next to them right there. Be a real nice park to enter into, Salem, of course. But I don't know is there any thoughts? Has anyone come up to ask about changing the zoning there?
You're talking about the southeast corner?
Southeast corner, yes.
Yeah.
And southwest corner.
Well, I thought that was with the Scapiticis, and they had presented years ago
Years ago.
a plan to develop that corner,
Yes.
and that. So I mean, it's, as far as us goes, I don't know, it's already zoned something else. I mean, as far as, I don't know if it's commercial or what it is over there.
Something
Yeah.
was presented a couple years ago, but
Yes.
nothing's been brought to us formally.
No.
And if any interest has been brought to the township, Paul would probably be the first to know.
The land right there is currently all zoned agricultural residential, and that's what the plan calls for. And we haven't had any
Okay.
particular interest recently, so.
Okay, thank you. It was interesting because I was here for the Scapitici
Uh-huh.
meeting also, because even what they presented was actually infringing onto the neighbor's property. And the planning person, I don't think it was you at that time, could point out that it was, it's personal property. It's owned by the residents there. It's on the other side of the street. But the interesting part is, again, the different things we were told through the years, like I gotta get there again, I gotta go southwest corner.
Uh-huh.
It was cleared to do agricultural, because it was all treed before.
But isn't there a gas line that goes underneath there?
Don't know. Oh, yeah, there probably is.
Because there can't be development over the top of it.
Oh, that's helpful, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, because then as they're trying to, because they actually have it advertised right now for sale And I have to admit, I forgot the wording.
People put a lot of signs up.
Okay,
that
good.
May not be.
It says multiple future zoning. So that's when it was like, all right, I need to come and find out what's happening.
Well,
So,
they haven't presented anything to us
Okay.
as far as that goes.
All right.
Change anything.
so I would just want to keep coming to the meetings, just in case they do change.
Or
Yeah,
you could come in on Wednesdays when Paul's here and probably ask him directly. He'll tell you much more quickly than having to sit through a meeting.
that sounds good.
And if anything is proposed that would require rezoning, we're required by law to provide notification within 300 feet
Okay, all
of the property
right.
by mail. So if you're within 300 feet, you would certainly get notice if the property has.
We got noticed last time, so that's why we all came. But I just, when all this stuff starts happening, you're just like, ooh, I do like Salem. I came here because it's rural. And again, the definition is hard and it means different things to different people, but I know what I enjoy, so I love living here. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Mr. Horton?
I think we're lucky to have Bruce on the committee. That's impressive.
It is.
It's a lot of work.
It is.
I think that was a wise choice to be on the board.
Bruce does a bang-up job.
Anyone else? Ms. Hamilton?
Yeah, I'm impressed with what Bruce did, but I would caution you where you want to talk to people about what they want the land to be. Most people want to control not only their land, but their neighbor's land. They don't want development on my farm, but that's my right, and I don't want to lose it. And just because a farmer owns the land doesn't mean it's not an investment. It's probably the largest single investment they have. It's probably greater than the animals, it's greater than the equipment, and it is significant to us. When we buy land, and we've bought a lot of it in the 40 years that I've been married, we bought a couple hundred acres. What we pay for the land is determined by what the land can become. So on land that's marginal, Bruce, as you talked about, maybe has those wet soils, I don't expect to pay a huge amount of money because it's marginal, first of all, farmland, and it really can't be developed with current standards. But a farm that perks, land that perks, and there's a piece between what the township owns and what I own that just was perked. It's 40 acres, it's an estate residential. The guy that dug it said that it's the easiest perks he's ever done. Guarantee you that the people selling that land at this point want to maximize their investment in land. And so that would be my only caution, because everyone wants, again, rural is a tough, and that's why I asked you to define it, because it means something different to everyone. Some people, rural is some large lots. I would encourage you, as you look at trying to define rural and putting tools in our master plan and in our zoning ordinance to keep Salem rural, as something called transfer development rights. And Dick Carlisle actually was part of a study or wrote a paper on it, so I'm sure that Carlisle Wortman is very well versed in it. But what transfer development rights do, there's no cost to the local municipalities. You can have a parcel, a large parcel, and we'll take that estate residential I just talked about, where they currently can have 8 homes. And because it does perk, and it could go down to 1 acre minimums, they find another large landowner and say, let me buy 30 units of development from you. And so from that larger parcel, maybe it's a 75 acre parcel, you sell those 30 units of development, and then in perpetuity, the larger parcel stays open. So I would encourage you to at least investigate that tool as you move forward. Thank you.
One of the things I did read on and again, Paul will step in because, on rural character is carving up, and by setting these 2 acre and 5 acre standards doesn't, all you end up with is larger lots, but they still fill up the land, and what they did suggest is that you want to consider just that, like setting density standards, but not necessarily every house is on 2 acres, but you have, like you said, 30 units collectively, and you position them in 30 acres of a 160 acre site, and you have the natural features and things like that. So that's certainly something that was one of the things I was trying to maybe point out or get to is the fact that there's opportunities in looking at things a little bit differently as we go forward here. And again, that rural character is not, you know, as we've seen before, we're trying to limit how many times we cut up a piece of property into lots, and it may not be the right answer. So, and I don't know what the right answer is, as I said right from the beginning. This is not my profession, I'm not an expert at this or an authority at it, but it's interesting enough to invest some time to do a little homework and try and at least be somewhat educated as we sit up here and do what we're supposed to be doing.
Thank you, Bruce.
A couple things. Nice job, Bruce, on the charts. And that word rule, like Linda said, means something different to everybody. I mean, rule can mean I move out here and I want to hunt. And there's other people that want the rule setting but maybe don't like hunters. So there's a lot of things with that word means differently to everybody.
One of the things that an opportunity is, again, I know this community doesn't like a lot of rules, but in order to minimize the amount of rules, we have to have good respect for our neighbors at the same time to try and minimize the number of rules, because disrespectful neighbors starts pushing us to have to bring in or enforce or create more rules. And that's one of the ordinances, if you will. So, yeah, I'd like to think that our community is going to be forward thinking to be respectful neighbors and minimize the need for us to create, you know, some of the very tight ordinances that other communities have put in place. And respecting people's rights that, you know, hey, you have the right to you know, practice your hunting, and as well as you have a right to farm, you have the right for, you know, a lot of things, but having a little respect to try and balance that out with somebody else's rights for a little peace and quiet certain times of the day, etc. So, you know, it's a broad thing, but just having some respect for your neighbors and thinking about your neighbors can go a long way towards minimizing the amount of ordinances we have to sit up here and try and wade through and write.
Very good. Anyone else? Okay. Meeting's adjourned at 8:03.
Where? Huh?